to chapter 21. We talked a little bit last time about this man Pasher, one of the priests. He comes up again tonight, not just briefly, but we'll talk a little bit about him again. Well, no, I told you wrong. This man Pasher in chapter 21 is a different Pasher. Remember last week I told you there was 4 different Pashers in the Bible, in the Old Testament? This is a different one. If you notice, they've got different fathers. Chapter 21, verse 1 says, "The word which came unto Jeremiah from the Lord when King Zedekiah sent unto him Pasher, the son of Melchiah, and Zephaniah, the son of Messiah, the priest, saying." So this Pasher here is the son of Melchiah, or Melchiah, however you want to say it. Back in chapter 20, Pasher was the son of Emir. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but so it's 2 different men with the same name. So it was a popular name at one time in Israel. So the word came unto Jeremiah from the Lord, and this is when King Zedekiah was in charge. King Zedekiah sent Pasher, who it appears here was also one of the priests, just like the other Pasher. Zedekiah sent Pasher to Jeremiah, and the word of the Lord that Jeremiah had to say to tell him was, verse 2, "Inquire, I pray thee, of the Lord for us. For Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, maketh war against us. If so be that the Lord will deal with us according to all his wondrous works, that he may go up from us." So Zedekiah has sent this priest to Jeremiah with this request for the Lord. And it seems kind of odd to us, because especially since we've been studying the kings in Sunday school. The kings in Judah, for the most part, most of them were good kings to a certain extent. They had their bad kings also, but they were at least in the right lineage as far as Israel's kings were concerned. The northern kingdom's kings were all over the place. But the southern kingdom, Judah, these men would have been in the line of David. And as far as we can tell, that lineage had stayed true. But the king requests Jeremiah to pray to the Lord. Why wouldn't the king have prayed to the Lord himself? David did. Solomon did. Some of the others did. Why didn't the king pray? Well, could it be that he knew Jeremiah was somebody special? He was somebody that he knew the Lord was listening to during all this. And it also could be that the king knew how far Jerusalem and Judah had slipped away from the Lord, how far they had fallen from the Lord. And Nebuchadnezzar, I should say Nebuchadrezzar, you notice the spelling there. It's a different spelling. There's 2 different kings that have a similar name in Babylon even. This one is Nebuchadrezzar. He is already making war on Judah. Verse 3, Then said Jeremiah unto them, Thus shall ye say to Zedekiah, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Behold, I will turn back the weapons of war that are in your hands, wherewith ye fight against the king of Babylon, and against the Chaldeans, which besiege you without the walls, and I will assemble them into the midst of this city. In other words, he's going to stop Israel's weapons. The Lord's going to, they're not going to have any effect on the Babylonian army. That's not what you want to hear. You know, when you're a priest and you come from the king, you don't want to have to go back and tell the king that's what he said. You know, because that's not a good sign if God's promised to not give you the battle. And remember, Israel and Judah in particular, they're used to the Lord being on their side and helping them in battles and fighting wars and against their neighbors, and the majority of the time they won because the Lord was with them. But now he's not with them. Matter of fact, he's against them now. He's the one that has sent the army of Babylon. Verse 5, And I myself will fight against you with an outstretched hand and with a strong arm, even in anger and in fury and in great wrath. This is the Lord speaking still. And afterward saith the Lord, I will deliver Zedekiah, king of Judah, and his servants and the people, and such as are left in this city from the pestilence, from the sword, and from the famine, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and into the hand of their enemies, and into the hand of those that seek their life, and he shall smite them with the edge of the sword. He shall not spare them, neither have pity nor have mercy. So Zedekiah, God tells Jeremiah to tell these men, your king is going to be captured. Him and everybody in his house are going to be captured. And if you notice there in the latter part of verse 7, he says, and into the hand of their enemies and into the hand of those that seek their life, and he shall smite them with the edge of the sword. They're going to die. They're going to be taken captive, and then they're going to be killed. And we'll get into that more of that story later in the book of Jeremiah. God starts giving more details on what's going to happen to their kings and princes and all their families. Verse 8, And unto this people thou shalt say, Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I set before you the way of life and the way of death. He that abideth in this city shall die by the sword, and by the famine, and by the pestilence. But he that goeth out and falleth to the Chaldean that besiege you, he shall live, and his life shall be unto him for a prey. So if you stay and fight in the city, you're going to die not only by the sword, but by famine and pestilence. That happens. That holds true. During the siege, many will die not only by the battle, from the battle itself, by the sword, but they're going to starve to death. They're going to die from famine, and there's going to be disease. When you have famine, when you have starvation, you have disease sets in. But if they stay in the city, that's what's going to happen to them. But if they will surrender, in other words, if they'll go out, he just falleth to the Chaldeans, he shall live. So if they'll go out and surrender, they'll live. They're going to be captive, but they'll live. And many of them do that. Many of them are taken captive. For I have sent my face against this city for evil, and not for good, saith the Lord. It shall be given unto the hand of the king of Babylon, and he shall burn it with fire. Remember, Jerusalem was totally destroyed during this time. The king of Babylon destroyed much of the city, and you can go to the book of Nehemiah and read where Nehemiah, when he was sent there to rebuild the walls, how bad it really was. He goes into great detail on what all they had to rebuild, and it was pretty bad. But God says, I have set my face against this city for evil. God's doing this. This is not the king of Babylon doing it on his own. He didn't come up with this thought in his mind on his own. God put it there. And God is the one that's sinning because of their evil ways, because they have sinned against God. Verse 11, and touching the house of the king of Judah, say, hear ye the word of the Lord. So he's going to tell us what about he talks about the king of Judah, the house of the king of Judah. This is his family, in other words. O house of David, thus saith the Lord, execute judgment in the morning, and deliver him that is spoiled out of the hand of the oppressor, lest my fury go out like fire, and burn that none can quench it, because of the evil of your doings. It's all because of the evil that they have done. And he says, the house of David. These are the descendants of David. This king Zedekiah is a descendant of David, and those in his house, his family. All this is going to happen to them because of their evil doings. Verse 13, and behold, I am against thee, O inhabitant of the valley, and rock of the plain, saith the Lord, which say, who shall come down against us, or who shall enter into our habitations? But I will punish you according to the fruit of your doings, saith the Lord, and I will kindle a fire in the forest thereof, and I shall devour all things round about it. The last verse there, he says, but I will punish you according to the fruit of your doings. What was the fruit of their doings? They had turned their back on God. They were worshiping false gods. They had committed spiritual adultery. What does he do? He sends a nation, probably the nation that's most well known for its pagan beliefs, Babylon. If you study much history of Babylon, you know it's in what was called the cradle of creation. It was the best we can tell by what we see in Genesis. It looks as though the Garden of Eden was not too far from where Babylon was located. It was in that part of the world. Of course, now we know that God destroyed all that with the flood, but still. But Babylon was full of paganism, full of false worship, and he sent someone like that to destroy Israel. They got what they'd been doing. They wanted to follow after false gods, so he sends the nation in that part of the world that is the greatest nation as far as their false worship. He sends them to destroy Israel, and the people in Israel don't know it yet. They don't realize it. They don't understand it. That's why God sent this army against them. And not only is this army going to come against them, it's going to take a bunch of them back captive, and they're going to have to live in Babylon for somewhere around 70 years before they're set free. And by then, it's kind of like Moses in the wilderness. Remember, there was a generation that died off. The ones that had so displeased the Lord at some point, the Lord killed off them and wouldn't let them enter the promised land. Well, the same thing's going to happen with the captivity. Many of the ones who were so were so wrapped up in their paganism and their false worship in Jeremiah's day would not live to come back. They would die in Babylon. It would be their children and grandchildren that would come back. A totally different generation. I'm going to stop there for tonight. Next week, chapter 22 is pretty lengthy. We'll look more into it and talk more about the king of Judah. Actually, he gets into another king, Josiah, in chapter 22, and so we'll look more into that, and it gets more into detail as we're going along in this study. The Lord's getting more and more in detail. He's giving more and more detail on what's going to happen to them, and they he starts naming names more than he has before. In this, he starts naming the kings and their princes and their sons and daughters, and we learn a little bit more about Babylon, who's coming from there, and more about their king. So come back and be with us for this next lesson. So we'll end there for now.